we've talked a lot today about the sort of high-level strategy. Robin shared both in terms of the business strategy and your content strategy. Robin shared some really interesting insights about what the enterprise is looking for in terms of the content. I'm going to be focusing on what this means in terms of implementation and workflow and talent, and how to think about those. Before I dive into that, I wanted
to have you take off your tag because it's interfering with the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Don't want to compete with myself. Before I dive into the more tactical aspects of this, I wanted to share some additional data with you that I think is really meaningful. Take a step back and look at sort of the more macro level issues that Robin had started us thinking about. Namely, the role that the impact iOS is having on how we're getting access to information. So of course that means both the iPhones and the iPads. But we hit a tipping point in the fourth quarter of 2011 when iPads began outselling PCs. And these numbers didn't even take into account the smartphones. So if you added those back in and Android phones into the mix, Windows probably made up less than 50% of all internet-connected devices. Another way to think about that is that at that point, so end of 2011, iPad is now equal to 17% of the overall PC market. And that was up from June of that year when it was 11%, and a year before that, or a year from this, 6 months before the 11%, it was 7%. So these are pretty dramatic changes in the course of 1 year. And then further, with respect to the enterprise, tablet usage. If you focus on the bottom bar here, Morgan Stanley had prepared a blue paper, and they went out and they too polled companies. And at that point, 21% of companies were purchasing tablets for use. And another 8% were allowing employee-owned tablets on their network. So total of 30% roughly access to tablets. A year from then, so roughly into where we are now, they were anticipating that 51% of companies were anticipating purchasing tablets, and another 16% were going to allow employee-owned tablets. So 30% now climbed to nearly 70% of organizations were dealing with tablets. So against this backdrop of inevitability, I wanted to talk some more about what this means for organizations that are somewhere along the continuum of diving in to the mobile space, or creating, who've dipped their toe in the water, and what that means in terms of the budget and what funds you have access to. And thinking about this in terms of product development and innovation. So you want to also look at your organization. Is the structure going to support this move towards creating mobile offerings? What publishing tools are you using? Can I use the ones that we currently have on hand, the software and licenses that we currently offer? Or do I need to expand that? And then in terms of the talent I have in my organization, do I have what I need? And if not, how am I going to fill in the gaps in skills in the organization? So, my background is as a product developer, and so I tend to look at this through that lens, but also in the process of, as a consultant, I inevitably run up against the reality that you can create the best new product out there, but if your organization doesn't have the various pieces in place to support that product once it's been launched, it's not going to succeed. So you got to think about innovation, which I distinguish from product development. Product development is actually making the product. Innovation is what your organization is doing to support the sale of new products. So what we're going to talk about today also assumes that you have a systematic approach in place toward offering new products, and that you're taking a phased approach. So phase one, you're experimenting. You're dabbling. You're seeing what mobile tools you need to work with. You're tinkering with the content and understanding how mobile is different from online. And then once you've wrapped your mind around, and people are carving out time as they need to, and once you've wrapped your mind around that, then you're going to move on to the trial phase in phase two. You're going to think, you can now think about, well, here's how I can use this mobile technology and create a new product around it. And you're going to reach out to your company to secure funding to launch a trial. And then in phase three, you've done this many times, and you figured out what works and what doesn't. You have a portfolio of products, of mobile products, and now you've got enough scale that you want to think about creating a team, a dedicated team to mobile. So we're going to be working through the 4 different categories that I touched on in the agenda, and seeing how each of these is affected in the different phases. So with respect to budget, in phase one, you're going to just have your team carve out a certain agreed upon percentage of their time to tinker. By phase two, again, you're thinking about creating a trial, and so you're seeking corporate funding to do this. And by phase three, you want to line up dedicated money and budget dollars and team members to focus on the mobile experience. Again, you want to think of this in terms of a process. So let's focus on phase two and phase three here. Ideally, your organization is going to have a product development pipeline in place, which suggests that you're going to need to communicate to everyone in your organization how that works. If you have a new idea for a product, what documents do you have to write? To whom do you submit it? What are the dates that you need to submit it? Who's on the committee that's going to be evaluating it? What criteria are they using to evaluate it? And you want to broadcast this information widely so that you can encourage people throughout the organization to submit ideas. So once those ideas start flowing, you also have to take what I encourage taking a sort of a portfolio approach to the new products, realizing that they're not all going to succeed. In fact, the vast majority of them will not succeed. But that's okay. You want that to happen because you learn from that. Again, part of that process is going to involve encouraging people to submit ideas. They're going to get the ideas reviewed, presumably by their managers, and there's going to be an approval process there where the manager says, nope, we're going to kill that idea, or go back and revise it, or, yeah, looks good, go ahead and submit it to the innovation committee. And you can see how the numbers are starting to dwindle. We're focusing on the grayed out dots here. The innovation committee is going to go through the same approval process: red light, revise, green light, and then you get to funded trials, and so those get sent out into the real world. You want to fail fast, so see what works, see what doesn't, modify your product, and see how your audience responds to it. And some of these products will not work. And so by the end, you've gotten down from an initial 10 ideas down to 1 that succeeded. And I think realistically, by the time you're, and this is a pretty good ratio, 10% success rate. But so realistically, to get a whole portfolio of mobile products, you're looking at 100 efforts to get maybe 10 that succeed. Then you want to, at various points, there's a prioritization process that needs to go on. Painful but necessary, because the temptation is to, for any new product, to just throw every possible feature into it that you can. It's not going to work. We've all learned that that means you're just going to be slower to market. And again, we want to fail fast here. So this is a grid that I like to work with, where you start prioritizing everything, and you're going to rank each feature across 5 different criteria. First, impact tends to be a universally good one. It can be impact in terms of the revenue that it's generating, or the margin, or if there are a few competitors out there in the market. You're going to need to, this is all about judgment. This is just a way to get you to organize your thoughts. You're going to have to use your judgment on what categories to use here. Then you're going to rank impact, and you're going to rank everything. I recommend a scale of 1 to 5. In the case of impact, it's 5 would be a high impact feature. 1 would be a low impact feature. Then you're going to want to look at some practical aspects of it. In this case, I suggested contracting, speccing it out, designing it, and implementing it. How easy are these to do? And again, you're going to rank them. In this case, though, 5 is a difficult task, and 1 is an easy one. And then you're going to tally up these 4 categories to get a total over here. And so what you're trying to identify is features that are highly impactful, but easy to implement. And I want to bring your attention down to feature 5.1 down here, because there's, again, judgment involved. And this is actually derived from a project that I worked on, where it was impactful, but it was not so easy to implement. But there was universal agreement that it was worth pursuing. So from there, we want to start thinking about your organization. And again, in phase 1, you're in the experimental phase, not much is going to change. By phase 2, you might want to think about revising the ownership structure. You're going to want to get someone behind the project who has enough clout in the organization to line up resources and buy-in from senior management. And by phase 3, you want to start thinking about whether it's appropriate to have a freestanding team working around all of this, or at least having a management so that you can make decisions and have a certain amount of autonomy about mobile initiatives. In terms of organization, I think it's common, we've touched on it several times today, the sort of siloed approach where editor A is managing both content producers and the digital production. And this can result in your sort of feudal or siloed structure, as well as duplication of resources, because we can see here that whereas publication A is using the in-house digital solutions team, the other ones are either outsourcing or using both the digital solutions team and freelancers. So as the organization's commitment to mobile increases, you might want to consider moving towards a structure where you've got the different publications and the digital solutions group reporting in to leadership who have enough authority to, in the case of content, make everyone play nice in the sandbox, share resources, prioritize access to digital solutions, and so forth. You want to have clear understanding about what the digital solutions team is going to be doing, which is primarily supporting and training, but not actually producing the content. And then you're going to need to start thinking about your content producers, because I think in this day and age, the reality is that they need to produce all types of content. So they may have grown up in the text world, but they're going to be producing blogs and video and so forth. And how are you going to make sure that they are succeeding at that? And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Again, as the commitment to mobile matures, you want to shift away from a functional structure where each team member performs his task and then throws the project over the wall to the next person. And there's a sort of serial effect. And I think someone earlier was talking, Charlene made some interesting points about how you want to move toward a more cloud-like structure or a more autonomous structure where the team members are all in one place and dedicated and have a fair amount of autonomy. Publishing tools. So phase one, you're going to be tinkering. You're going to acquire a few tools that you may need, software and licenses and the like. By phases 2 and 3, you're going to have a better understanding of what you need, and you're going to be modifying what you've got, and you're going to be acquiring more to have a really rich environment for your customers. You want to go through a systematic thought process, which is completely exhaustive and mutually exclusive, as consultants like to say, which is to say you really want to go through and make a complete list of all the different content types that you're offering: images, text, video, audio, and think about whether you can use what you got, or you got to modify it, or you need to acquire a different solutions. And it extends into events and presentations and social media. I was completely exhaustive, I think, and exhausting. So similarly with platform, you want to go through this. You're going to have, we can debate, what constitutes a platform. I think social media now ranks, but you got print, web, mobile, events. And then thinking about your talent. Early on, you can probably get away with using freelancers or training folks or having them train themselves, as the case may be. But again, further down the commitment curve, you're going to want to really incorporate a lot of training and hiring in talent as the case requires. You need to think about doing an inventory of what you got and what you need to have, and do a gap analysis between the two. So, and this is with regard to talent, of course. So something is like a questionnaire is often the product of a team effort. You have someone, in this case Mary T, who's actually creating the survey, and she offers, she has to be able to compose the questions, she has to be able to work in a medium like, say, SurveyMonkey, and she brings domain knowledge as well as the ability to format questions in a way that elicits meaningful findings, different types of open-ended, yes, no, or multiple choice questions. Once the survey comes back, the findings are submitted to someone who's got more of a data and analytics or background, and who can analyze the findings, find the patterns, and so forth. So 2 very different skill sets there alone. And you want to go through each type of content that you're producing systematically and figure out who's doing what and whether you have those talents on hand. So presentations in PowerPoint, data visualizations in InDesign or Photoshop, video interviews, and so on and so forth. And so the grayed out area were the skills that were not currently on staff. So then it's worth, among the leadership, going through the exercise of thinking about, well, what are our options for acquiring those skills? We can train, hire, or outsource, and go through the exercise. I just did the sort of obvious pros and cons to these options. Training, your skills stay in-house, but it's time-consuming. Hiring, you get a fresh perspective, but it's expensive. Outsourcing, you can quickly get the needed skill, but the skill departs at the end of the project, and the person is typically unfamiliar with your internal systems. So you want to have understanding within your organization about what the pros and cons are of each and when you're going to use each of these options. And then go through, again, we identified a talent gap for presentations, data viz, and video interviews, and figure out what option you're going to use, look at the pricing, and figure out who's going to be able to deliver those options to you in a way that suits your budget. So we've looked at taking a phased approach to creating new products, and looking at how the budget, organization, publishing, tools, and talent are going to be impacted at each of these different phases of releasing the product. And you should find in your handouts a checklist of questions that we've each put together, including mine. There are also some of the grids that I showed you just earlier. And I'm happy to take some questions now or later on, and I'm happy to take questions offline as well.